In 3 years of marriage, Finn cheated 7 times. Each time, I'd cry and scream, he'd apologize, and the cycle repeated, until his first love returned to China. This time, though, I stayed quiet. At the welcome party for her, my heart raced as I stared at her cold, elegant pianist brother. So it turned out, I hadn't lost the ability to love. I just never met the right person. While Finn clung to his first love, reminiscing about the past, I was already plotting how to turn her brother into my husband. Finn was the one who told me Willow Lynn was coming back. He stared out the window as he spoke, tapping his fingers lightly on the table, like it was a trivial matter. I knew he was waiting for me to smash the glass in my hand, or cry and ask why he always hurt me. But I only hummed in response, continuing to apply my lipstick. Finn turned to me, his eyes filled with unfamiliar curiosity. "You have nothing to say." I pressed my lips together to even out the color, my expression calm as I met my reflection in the mirror. "Did she have a smooth trip? Send her my regards." He froze, as if his punch had landed on cotton. The welcome party was hosted by the Lin family. Finn tried on 3 suits before settling on the one I'd once said made him look affectionate. I chose a simple black dress, with no necklace, only a pair of pearl earrings. As I linked arms with him to enter, I felt his muscles tense. Willow stood in the center of the crowd, dressed in white, her smile bright. She waved at Finn, her eyes sparkling. Finn instinctively tried to pull his hand away, but I withdrew mine first. "Go on," I said. He looked flustered. "Don't overthink it." I smiled, my gaze already drifting past his shoulder, to the piano in the corner. There he sat, his profile as cold as snow on a distant mountain. His fingers rested on the keys, but he didn't play. The noise around him seemed to be separated by a layer of glass. Willow dragged Finn over, her voice crisp, "Brother, look who's here." He lifted his eyes. First, he glanced at Finn and nodded faintly. Then his gaze fell on me, lingered for a second, maybe shorter. But the cold ashes in my heart suddenly burst into flame. Finn spent the entire night hovering around Willow, handing her drinks, laughing with her, brushing confetti off her shoulder, just like he'd done so many times before. I sat on a high stool by the window, sipping champagne slowly, my eyes fixed on the piano. Later, he played Debussy's Clair de Lune. As his fingers danced across the keys, a cool, luminous glow seemed to fill the room. When the last note faded, he stood up and left. As he passed me, a faint scent of cedar wafted by. I set down my glass and followed him. The night wind on the terrace was cool. He leaned against the railing, a red glow flickering at his fingertips. He was smoking. "Need something?" His voice was even colder than his piano playing. I stood beside him, gazing at the city lights in the distance, just like he was. "You play beautifully." "Thank you." Silence spread like the night, but it felt far more comfortable than the fake pleasantries inside. "Willow Lynn's brother," I turned to him, "what's your name?" He crushed the cigarette, his profile sharp in the light and shadow. "Ryan Lynn." "Oh," I nodded, "I'm Nora Sue, Fingu's wife." He finally looked at me directly. "I know." On the way home, Finn talked non-stop, about how hard Willow had it overseas, how she was still as innocent and cheerful as ever. I leaned against the car window, my lips curving slightly as I stared at my reflection. My thoughts were elsewhere, on that cold, handsome face, and the faint scent of cedar that still lingered. "Are you listening?" Finn sounded annoyed. "I am," I replied lightly. "I'm happy for her." He looked stunned, as if choked for words. When we got home, he didn't go to the study as usual, he followed me into the bedroom. "Nora Sue, we need to talk." I took off my earrings, glancing at him in the vanity mirror. "Talk about how many times you spilled your drink for her tonight." His expression changed. "So you do care after all?" I shook my head. "I don't anymore." It was the truth. The emotion swirling in his eyes suddenly felt so distant. I started asking around about Orion. Pianist who toured overseas year-round, introverted, rarely attending social events. He loved Brahms, hated sweets, and tuned pianos at an old music store in the southern part of the city every Wednesday afternoon. The store's street-facing window displayed an old Steinway. On Wednesday, I passed by wearing a new misty blue dress. He was leaning over to inspect the strings. When he heard the wind chime above the door, he looked up. His movements paused when he saw me. "What a coincidence," I said, walking to the piano and running my fingers over its polished surface. "It's not a coincidence," he replied, bending back to his tuning. "This street only leads to the music store." I laughed. "Then I'll admit, I came on purpose." He didn't respond, but the corners of his lips seemed to lift slightly, a faint, almost imperceptible smile. Finn started coming home late, reeking of unfamiliar perfume and alcohol. Sometimes he'd test me, leaving little gifts from Willow in plain sight, a lipstick, a silk scarf. Once, I would have thrown them in the trash. Now, I just ignored them. My heart was too busy, memorizing Orion's favorite cafe, the brand of records he liked, the way he frowned slightly when tuning pianos. Love, it turned out, could shift not with a sudden collapse, but like an hourglass, slowly draining from one side and piling up on the other. Willow finally asked to meet me. In a private room at a tea house, she looked delicate and pitiful. Sister Nora Sue, don't blame Brother Finn, it's my fault. I stirred the matcha cream in my cup, suddenly remembering Orion hated sweets. I should ask him out for tea next time. Sister Nora Sue. I snapped back to attention, smiling at her. Your business with Finn is between you two. The tears she'd been holding back froze in her eyes. Why you were not angry? Not at all, I checked the time. Sorry, I have a painting exhibition to attend with someone. As I stood up, I added softly, by the way, just call me sister, we can be closer. She stared at me in shock. The exhibition featured abstract art, Orion's favorite. I found him standing in front of a chaotic, colorful painting. He was wearing a gray sweater, which softened his cold demeanor. You like clay too? He asked. I do now, I admitted frankly. He looked at me, a long look, so long I could see the faint shadow of his eyelashes. After the exhibition, we walked along the river. The late autumn wind was sharp, but my heart felt warm. Fingu doesn't treat you well, he said suddenly, a statement, not a question. I kicked a small stone at my feet. That's all in the past. Then why stay with him? I stopped and turned to face him. The river wind ruffled my hair, lighting up my eyes. Because I was waiting for you. He froze. A faint blush crept up his ears in the twilight. On Wednesday afternoon, I arrived at the music store early. Orion hadn't come yet, only the elderly shopkeeper, dozing off as a Suzhou opera played on the radio. I gently lifted the piano lid, my fingers brushing the slightly yellowed ivory keys. Want to try? His voice came from behind me, slightly breathless as if he'd hurried over. I pulled my hand back and turned to smile at him. Waiting for you to teach me. He was wearing a light gray linen shirt, his cuffs rolled up casually, revealing his thin wrists. He still smelled of clean cedar. The first movement of Clair de Lune, it's not hard, he said, gesturing for me to sit. The piano bench was narrow, we sat side by side, our arms brushing occasionally. He pressed a few notes first, demonstrating the fingerings, then wrapped his hand around my wrist, guiding it gently to the keys. Here, he said softly, light, like touching moonlight. His palm was warm, his fingertips calloused. My skin memorized that feeling. He taught me for half an hour. I learned slowly, making mistakes often, but he never rushed me. Whenever I got stuck, he'd simply take my hand and lead me through it again. You're very patient, I said as we left. Tuning pianos requires more patience, he locked the store door. You have to calibrate each string one by one, no rushing. We walked along the old street. The mutong leaves were half yellow, rustling down in the wind. He walked steadily, his pace unhurried. Following in his footsteps, I felt, for the first time, that walking could be such a pleasant thing. Your sister goes to see Fingu often, I said suddenly. Orion fell silent for a moment. Willow was spoiled, he said faintly. She always thinks whatever she likes should be hers. What about you? I asked. Would you take something that belongs to someone else? He stopped and turned to look at me. His eyes were as deep as an autumn lake. I only wait. Wait for what? For it to come to me on its own. Mutong leaf drifted down and landed on my shoulder. He reached out to brush it off, his movement natural, as if he'd done it 1,000 times. Fingu rarely comes home for dinner these days. When he does, there's always a lingering scent of perfume on him, mixed with whiskey and tobacco. He started bringing me gifts, expensive silk scarves, limited edition perfume, and a dazzling diamond necklace lying in the jewelry box. These are things that would have made me cry with joy once. Now I only say a faint thank you, not even bothering to open the boxes. You don't like them? He stopped me last night, bloodshot eyes staring at me. I do, I placed the necklace back in the jewelry box. They just don't suit me anymore. What does suit you then? His voice sounded anxious. Tell me, and I'll buy it. I looked at him, suddenly feeling strange. This man who splurged money on me never really saw me. Get some rest early, I walked around him and went upstairs. At the staircase landing, I glanced back, he was standing in the middle of the living room, clutching the necklace tightly. The light stretched his shadow long, lonely like an island. Orion Lin and I started dating like lovers, though neither of us spoke the word aloud. On Friday nights, he took me to a small restaurant hidden deep in an alley. The owner was an old acquaintance of his, a retired violinist from a symphony orchestra. There were only 4 tables in the shop, and the menu was written on a blackboard, changing every day. The usual? The owner asked with a smile. Ryan nodded, then turned to me. Do you like fish? The braised cushion carp here is excellent. Sure. While waiting for the food, he told me interesting stories about the orchestra's tours, how the entire group had stomachaches before performing at Vienna's Golden Hall, how crazy fans chased them for 3 streets in Tokyo, how he played the piano under the aurora in Reykjavik, his fingers numb from the cold keys. I rested my chin on my hand, watching the corners of his mouth lift as he spoke. Those distant parts of his life that I'd never shared were slowly unfolding before me through his words. What about you? He suddenly asked. Beyond being MRSGU, who are you? I froze. It was a question Finn had never asked. I like painting, I said. Though I haven't painted in a long time. Why not? Finn said the paint smells bad, and the art supplies take up too much space. I was shocked by my own words. Through the years, I'd lost so much of myself. Ryan looked at me quietly. Bring your art supplies to the music store next time, he said. There's an empty room upstairs with great light. The cushion carp arrived, steaming hot. He carefully picked out the big bones and put the plumpest part into my bowl. Be careful of the small bones. I bowed my head to eat, my eyes feeling a little warm. On Saturday afternoon, we went to the art museum. A French Impressionist exhibition was on, and Monet's original water lilies were on tour, something rare to see. There weren't many people in the gallery. We stood in front of Impression, Sunrise for a long time. The colors seemed to flow, I whispered. Like Debussy's music, he said. We looked at each other and smiled, an unspoken tacit understanding. After the exhibition, we rested at the museum cafe. He ordered black coffee, I got hot chocolate. Sweets make people happy, I said. Short-lived happiness, he replied faintly, yet reached out to wipe the cream from the corner of my mouth with his fingertip. The gesture was so natural it made my heart skip a beat. It started raining outside. The autumn drizzle veiled the world in a hazy gray. Neither of us was in a hurry to leave, we just watched the rain. Finn accompanied Willow to try on wedding dresses today, I suddenly said. I was surprised by how calm I sounded. Orion twirled his coffee cup. I know. Aren't you going to talk your sister out of it? I have, he looked out the window. She said this is the dream she's waited 10 years for. The rain pattered softly. What about you? I asked. What's your dream? He turned his head, his gaze falling on my face. After a long pause, he whispered, a dream that never ends. Finn came home late at night, drunk, with obvious hickeys on his neck. He collapsed on the sofa, calling my name. Nora Sue. Nora Sue. I stood on the stairs, watching him coldly. You're awake? He sat up dazedly. Pour me a glass of water. I didn't move. He rubbed his temples, his voice hoarse. Willow cried today, said she's sorry for you. I told her it's okay, that you're very generous. I laughed, a sharp, abrupt sound in the quiet night. Finn looked up, his drunken eyes staring at me. What are you laughing at? Myself, I walked down the stairs slowly. And you too. I poured a glass of water and placed it on the coffee table. The sound of the glass touching the marble was crisp, like something breaking. Fingu, how long has it been since we really talked? He froze. I never ask what you're busy with or who you're with, and you never tell me. What I'm doing, what I'm thinking, you never cared. He opened his mouth, wanting to defend himself, but I kept going. Like this glass of water, I pointed to the coffee table. You only think of it when you're thirsty. Drink it, put it down, and pick it up again only when you're thirsty next time. You never think about whether the water will get cold, whether the glass is dirty, or, I paused. Whether it's willing to be taken for granted like this. Most of Finn's drunkenness seemed to fade. He looked at me, his eyes shifting from confusion to clarity, then to panic. Nora Sue, have you been listening to what others say? Do I need to? I asked calmly. The perfume on your body, the marks on your neck, the time you come home in the early morning, do I need others to tell me any of this? His face turned pale. It's not what you think with Willow. What do I think? I interrupted him. Fingu, I don't care anymore. I stood up. From today on, do whatever you want. We're irrelevant to each other. I turned to go upstairs. Halfway up, I heard his hoarse voice, you changed. I stopped, not looking back. Yes, I said. Finally. On Sunday, Orion invited me to the old book market in the southern part of the city. Though called a book market, it was actually an old street along the river, lined with used book stalls on weekends. The air smelled of old paper mixed with the dampness of the river. We stopped at a stall selling sheet music. Ryan squatted down, searching carefully. Sunlight filtered through the Wutong leaves, dancing on his shoulders. Watching his focused profile, I suddenly wanted to paint him. Found it, he pulled out a yellow booklet. It was Schumann's Kindersinnen, a first edition with brittle page edges. Here, he handed it to me. A gift. I opened it, there were small pencil notes inside, neatly written. This is my teacher's sheet music when he was young, he smiled. He lost it later, never thought. I find it here. It's too precious, I can't take it. Keep it, he closed my fingers around the booklet. It deserves someone who cherishes it. We kept walking. Passing a stall selling old porcelain, I spotted a pair of small blue and white cups, warm glaze, painted with interlocking lotus patterns. Like them? Ryan asked. Yeah. He paid and handed one to me. One for each. I held the cup in my palm, feeling its warmth, like holding a small, complete moon. At noon, we ate noodles at a small restaurant by the river. He was better at picking out cilantro than the owner, removing every bit from my bowl. Last time we had fish, you pushed it all aside. He'd remembered such a small detail. The steam from the noodle soup blurred my vision, blurring his face too. Ryan Lin, I called him softly. If I'd met you sooner. If I hadn't married Fingu. If. I didn't finish the sentence, but he seemed to understand. Through the steam, his hand crossed the table, gently covering mine. No ifs, he said. Only now. Finn started coming home on time. At 6:30 sharp, the sound of keys turning in the lock would ring out. He often brought things with him, a bunch of fresh lilies, a box of pastries from an old brand, even a plush teddy bear once. Passed a flower shop, saw the lilies were blooming nicely. One sweet osmanthus cakes, you used to love them. Does the bear look like you? Round eyes. When he handed me these things, there was a cautious eagerness in his eyes, like a child submitting a belated apology. I took them, said thank you, then put the flowers in a vase, the pastries in the fridge, and the bear in the corner of the sofa. My movements were smooth, no pauses, no joy. Finn stood in the hallway watching me, his smile gradually stiffening. What do you want for dinner? He took off his coat. I'll cook. Anything. Held my sketchbook, ready to go upstairs. Today I'd agreed to paint the sunset with Orion. Nora Sue, he called me. I turned back. Today. Can we have a nice dinner? He chose his words carefully. Like before. The sincerity in his eyes was undeniable. 6 months ago, I would have been overjoyed. Now I only felt tired. Sure, I said, then turned and went upstairs. As I closed the door, I heard him sigh softly downstairs. The studio faces west, with the best light in the afternoon. Set up my easel and mixed the paints. A sketch from last week remained on the canvas, the corner of a piano, a slender hand resting on the keys, only the hand, no figure. Yet every time I looked at it, I thought of Orion Lin's profile as he tuned pianos with his head bowed. My phone vibrated. 1932 Beckstein arrived at the music store today. Its tone is beautiful. Want to hear it? Orion's messages were always like this, no question about my availability, just an irresistible invitation. When? At sunset. The piano's upstairs, with a west-facing window. I glanced outside. The autumn sky was high and clear, with clouds dyed pale gold and pink. Sure. I'll bring my art supplies. Waiting for you. Putting down the phone, I continued mixing paints, cobalt blue with a touch of magenta, the color of the dusk sky just before it darkens. Dinner was 3 dishes and 1 soup cooked by Fingu, stir-fried seasonal vegetables, sweet and sour pork ribs, braised tofu with scallions, and a pot of milky white Christian carp soup. His cooking had improved a lot. The soup was rich and non-fishy, sprinkled with finely chopped scallions. Taste it, he said, handing me a bowl. I took it and spooned a mouthful, temperature just right, seasoning perfect. It's delicious, I said. His eyes lit up, like a child receiving praise. Then I'll make it for you every day. I said nothing, just bowed my head to drink the soup. The dinner table was quiet, with only the soft clink of bowls and chopsticks. Finn tried to speak several times, but hesitated when he saw my expression. Finally, he said, Willow called today, wanting to see a play. I picked up a piece of tofu. I turned her down, he said quickly. I told her I was coming home to have dinner with my wife. He looked at me, waiting for a reaction. I lifted my head. You could have gone. He froze. Play tickets are hard to get, don't waste them. My tone was calm, even considerate. But Finn's face paled little by little. Nora Sue, his voice was hoarse, I chose you. I put down my chopsticks. The sky outside was completely dark. Fingu, I said softly, shouldn't you have chosen me? He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. I'm your wife, I continued. Choosing me is like using chopsticks to eat or an umbrella when it rains. It's your duty, not a favor. But you used to. I was foolish before, I smiled. I mistook duty for deep affection, and what was right for a kindness. Now I'm not foolish anymore. I stood up and started clearing the table. Finn sat there, motionless. The light shone down from above his head, casting a deep, heavy shadow. I'm going to the music store, I said after washing and drying the dishes. I'll be back late. Learning the piano again. His voice was dry. That teacher. Male or female? I walked to the entrance to change shoes. Does it matter? As I closed the door, I caught a glimpse of him through the crack, head bowed, shoulders slumping, like a doll drained of strength. The second floor of the music store was more beautiful than I imagined. The old Beckstein stood by the window, its dark golden finish glowing like honey in the sunset. Ryan was sitting on the piano bench, testing the keys. He turned when he heard my footsteps. Just in time. He played a short melody, notes flowing from the piano, rich and warm like aged wine. Schubert's Impromptu, he said. Perfect for dusk. I sat beside him, setting up my easel by the window with the paints already mixed. You paint, I'll play, he said. Thus, dusk was filled with color and sound. His fingers rose and fell on the keys, my brush swept across the canvas. The setting sun edged along, stretching our shadows until they overlapped on the floor. At one point, he stopped mid-passage. Here, he pointed to the sheet music, I can never play this well. I leaned over, it was a series of triplet modulations with complex fingerings. Let me try. As I placed my hand on the keys, he covered it from behind. His chest pressed against my back, his breath brushing my ear. Like this, he guided my fingers, light but firm. Our hands danced together on the keys, notes coming alive, leaping forth. After finishing that passage, neither of us moved. The sun had just sunk behind the buildings, painting the sky the color of embers. Nora Sue, he whispered. If I had returned to China earlier. No ifs, I leaned into his arms. Now is the perfect time. His arms wrapped around me, his chin resting on top of my head. We sat like that, watching the sky turn from orange-red to indigo, until the first star appeared, like someone finally opening their eyes. Fingu started following me. At first, I didn't notice. Until one day, when I walked out of the music store, I saw a familiar car reflected in the coffee shop window, a black Mercedes with a license plate ending in Finn's birthday. I stood on the sidewalk and texted Orion, someone's following me. Minutes later, he came out of the music store, carrying my art supply box. I'll walk you home. We strolled side by side on the old street stone pavement. His head naturally slipped around my shoulders. Glancing out of the corner of my eye, I saw the car following slowly behind, like a silent, stubborn shadow. Aren't you afraid he'll see? I asked. Ryan looked down at me. Are you? I thought for a moment, then shook my head. Then let him watch. We walked slowly, as if taking a leisurely stroll. Passing a stall selling sugar-roasted chestnuts, he bought a bag, peeled the first one, and handed it to me. For warmth. The chestnut was hot, its sweet aroma filling the cold air. I ate the chestnuts while he carried the box. The car kept following, at a distance, like a silent confrontation. At the community gate, Orion stopped. I'll leave you here. I nodded and took the box. He suddenly leaned down and pressed a light kiss on my forehead, soft, like a leaf brushing the water's surface. See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow. I turned and walked into the community. The distance from the gate to the building was over 100 steps. I could feel that gaze on my back, burning, painful, as if it would bore a hole through me. But I never looked back. The argument erupted on a Friday night. Orion had a small private concert and invited me as his only audience. It was held in an old villa in the southern part of the city, owned by an old friend of his, a piano collector living in France. That night, I wore a dark green velvet dress and pearl earrings. Orion's eyes showed undisguised admiration when he came to pick me up. You look like you stepped out of a Renaissance painting. I smiled and linked my arm through his. The concert was short, only 6 pieces, each one played for me. When the last note faded, the elderly collector walked over, clapping. Orion has never played like this for anyone, he said, smiling at me. You're very special, young lady. My face blushed, and Orion squeezed my hand tightly. It was late at night when it ended. Orion drove me home, stopping outside the community. We stood under the street lamp, saying goodbye. I'm performing in Berlin next week, he said. 10 days. That's a long time. If you want, he looked at me, you could come with me. Berlin's art galleries are beautiful in autumn. My heart skipped a beat. I'll think about it. Good. He leaned down and kissed me, a deep kiss, filled with reluctance and promise. When we pulled apart, we were both breathing slightly heavily. Though inside, he brushed a strand of hair behind my ear. Text me when you get up. I nodded and turned to walk into the community, my steps light as if floating. The living room lights were on brightly. Finn sat on the sofa, with an ashtray full of cigarette butts in front of him. He watched me walk in, his eyes cold yet fiery. Did you have fun? His voice was hoarse. I put down my bag. It was okay. That man, he paused, each word seeming to squeeze out through his teeth. He's Willow Lynn's brother, isn't he? My hand paused slightly as I took off my coat, then I continued hanging it up. Yes. Yes. He suddenly stood up, stepping closer step by step. So all this time you've been running out every day, going to the music store, art exhibitions, concerts. It's all with him. I didn't deny it, turning to face him. Yes. The last trace of color drained from his face. Why him? His voice trembled violently. Anyone else? Why does it have to be Willow's brother? Watching the shock, humiliation, and absurd anger swirling in his eyes, I suddenly found it somewhat ridiculous. Does it matter? It does. He roared. Nora Sue, are you using this to get back at Willow and me? I quietly looked at his flushed face, agitated with emotion. Get back at you. I repeated the phrase softly, shaking my head. Fingu, you think too highly of yourself. He froze. I don't need to get back at you. I walked to the wine cabinet, pouring a glass of water. The cold glass sobered me. I just happened to fall in love with him. That's all. Happened to? He laughed as if hearing something absurd. Happened to fall in love with the person who humiliates me the most. Happened to. When Willow and I. Fingu, I interrupted him, my voice calm, you and Willow Lynn are a thing of the past. Now it's me and Orion Lynn. He stumbled, grabbing the sofa back to steady himself. You admit it. You admit you cheated. If you insist on putting it that way, I put down the glass, turning to face him fully, then yes. I'm in love with Orion Lynn. I want to be with him. I paused, speaking clearly, so, let's get divorced. The air fell deathly silent. He stared at me fiercely, his gaze shifting from rage to overwhelming panic. Nora Sue. He grabbed the hem of my dress and knelt down, tears streaming down his face without warning. I'm sorry, I really am sorry. He looked just like he had every time he begged for my forgiveness after cheating. Don't leave me. Please. I looked down at him, this once high-spirited man, now kneeling at my feet, sobbing uncontrollably. Once, I would have felt heartache, softened, and forgiven him again and again. Now, I only felt sorrow for him. Fingu, stand up, I said. You look ridiculous. I won't. He clung tightly to my legs. Not until you promise not to leave me. Nora Sue, let's start over, okay? I'll give you all my company shares, the house, the cars, everything. I don't want anything else, just you. He cried like a child, his tears soaking the hem of my dress. Fingu, I said softly, don't you understand? He lifted his tear-stained face. I don't love you anymore. From the first time you stayed out all night, from the first time you lied to me, from the first time you gave the tenderness meant for me to someone else, my voice was calm, as if I were talking about someone else's life. Love died a little at a time. Now it's completely gone. Not even ashes remain. He froze, tears clinging to his eyelashes. Who you're with now, what you do, when you come home. I don't care anymore. It's like you don't care how many leaves fall from the tree outside the window. It has nothing to do with me. I slowly pulled my dress out of his grasp, gently but firmly. My lawyer will prepare the divorce papers. I'll keep the house, we'll split the savings, and I don't want any of your company shares. From now on, you're free. You can love Willow Lynn openly, give her a proper title, have children with her. I stood up and walked to the staircase. And I'll love who I want to love. This is good, isn't it? Fingu knelt there, motionless. The despair on his face turned to confusion, then to empty numbness. Nora Sue. He whispered, you really don't want me anymore? I didn't answer. I turned and went upstairs. Halfway up, I heard his suppressed, broken sobs, like a wounded beast howling in the night. I didn't stop. Pushing open the bedroom door, moonlight flooded the bed. I picked up my phone and texted Orion. I told him. Seconds later, the screen lit up. Wait for me. Okay. I put down the phone and walked to the window. The night sky was clear, dotted with countless stars. 井号井号井号 Final chapter. Ryan and I got married in spring. There was no grand banquet, only a small gathering of close friends in the old villa upstairs from the music store. I wore a simple beige satin dress and a pair of pearl earrings left by his mother. He played Schumann's Widmung as the prelude. The piano notes flowed like water, over the sunlit wooden floors and the newly placed pear blossoms on the windowsill. When exchanging rings, his fingers trembled slightly. The plain band lingered on my ring finger for a moment before he pushed it all the way down, light, yet feeling like an eternal promise. It's done, he said, kissing the back of my hand. Now you're mine. Our guests clapped and smiled. Outside the window, yutong trees were sprouting new leaves, bright green and translucent. Married life was like a slow, soothing andante. We lived in a small apartment with a courtyard in the southern part of the city. He still tuned pianos and taught lessons at the music store, occasionally traveling abroad for performances. I picked up my paintbrushes again, setting up a small studio in the north-facing room. Life had a clear outline, the aroma of shared coffee in the morning, the interweaving of black and white piano keys and vibrant paint strokes in the afternoon, and the figures of us trimming roses side by side in the courtyard at dusk. Quarrels were rare. When we disagreed, he would always stop first, walk over, and hug me from behind, resting his chin on top of my head. Take a break, he'd say. We'll talk when you're ready. At night, we often curled up on the sofa to watch old movies. His fingers would unconsciously play with my hair, and as I drifted off to sleep leaning on his shoulder, I could hear his steady heartbeat, like the tides, eternal and reliable. News of Fingu came in fragments. He and Willow Lynn never got married. It was said the engagement banquet was all planned, but he called it off at the last minute. Some said it was due to property disputes, others claimed Willow had found someone wealthier. A vague rumor suggested Finn had hit Willow during a drunken rage, over an ambiguous contact in her phone. The truth was unclear. But once, at a gallery opening, I caught a glimpse of him from afar. Finn stood at the edge of the crowd, his suit still expensive but hanging loosely on him. His gaze swept across the exhibition hall, and when it met mine, he quickly looked away as if burned. He turned and left in a hurry, his back looking somewhat defeated. Ryan was discussing the brushwork of a painting with me and didn't notice. I looked away, gently placing my champagne glass on a waiter's tray. Tired? He asked softly. Little, I said, linking my arm through his. Let's go home. It was drizzling that evening. As our car passed through the old town, I saw Finn walking out of a small tavern alone. He wasn't holding an umbrella, and the light rain soaked his hair and shoulders. He stood on the sidewalk and lit a cigarette. The flame flickered in the twilight, illuminating his gaunt face. The traffic light turned green, and the car slowly drove away. In the rearview mirror, his figure grew smaller and smaller, eventually disappearing into the hazy rain. Like an old painting smudged by water, faded beyond recognition. I didn't look back. The following autumn, I held my first solo exhibition, themed the shapes of light and time. Most of the works depicted fragments of our lives, moonlight on the windowsill, dancing fingers on piano keys, and wet roses in the courtyard after rain. Ryan played at the opening. After the last piece, he walked over to me and, in front of everyone, leaned down and kissed my cheek gently. Amidst the applause, a familiar gallery owner joked with a smile, Mr. Lin was known as an iceberg around here, but now he's like spring snow melted by the sun. He smiled too, squeezing my hand, his fingertips warm. It's all Morris's doing. On the third day of the exhibition, I received a bouquet of unsigned flowers, white irises paired with a few sprigs of eucalyptus. The flower card was blank, except for the embossed logo of a familiar flower shop, the one Finn used to order from. I divided the flowers into several glass vases at the gallery's front desk, mixing them with other, congratulatory bouquets. Turning around, I saw Ryan standing in front of a painting. It depicted an old street on a rainy night, with a street lamp casting a warm yellow glow and blurred reflections of two side-by-side figures in the puddles on the ground. He stared at it quietly for a long time. Walked over and gently took his hand. He squeezed back, his grip gentle yet firm. Outside the window, the autumn sun shone brightly. Light filtered through the yutong leaves, casting swaying, golden spots on the wooden floor. On the night the exhibition ended, we curled up on the sofa sorting through postcards, blessings from visitors, and messy drawings of pianos and flowers by young children. At the bottom of the pile was a plain white card with a single line of printed text, "The light in your paintings is beautiful." No signature. The font was neat song typeface with no trace of handwriting. Orion was resting his head on my shoulder, breathing evenly. I picked up the card, held it up to the light, and then gently tucked it into a thick art album. Closing the album, it made a soft click, like closing a distant, long-finished story. Tired? He mumbled, wrapping his arm tighter around my waist. No, I said, turning off the floor lamp and leaning into his arms as the night deepened. I just think. This is perfect. No ma'am, he replied sleepily, kissing the top of my head. It will always be perfect. Moonlight slipped through the gap in the curtains, spreading a soft silver path on the floor. Outside, the night wind rustled through the wutong leaves, like time itself, flowing gently and calmly into the deeper, quieter distance. And in that quiet, I had finally found my own, complete home.